everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. Today we have the opportunity of sitting down with birth father Kyle, who's going to share his experience of placing his son for adoption back in 2010. So welcome, Kyle.
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited. We don't often get to hear the perspective from the birth father side of things, so we're hopeful that our audience will kind of gain some new knowledge about what it's like to be a birth father.
Awesome. Very good. Glad I can help.
So why don't you start by taking me back to 2010 and a little bit of the reasons why you chose to place your son for adoption.
Yeah. So long story short, basically I was down in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I had very limited family and stuff like that. I just moved down there probably about a year before the adoption. And I was down there with my ex girlfriend, and long story short, we living in a little studio apartment. We were very tight on money. I was the only one that was working. We only had one vehicle that was basically a single cab truck, which, wasn't fitted for an infant or stuff like that. And like I said, we just didn't have space in the tiny apartment. We're one income. It was difficult. It was very difficult during that time, and especially having zero family support being down there.
Oftentimes people feel like, as the man, when you find out that you're facing an unplanned pregnancy, many men think they have no rights, no involvement in kind of what the woman decides. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about your participation in making that decision with the mother of your child.
Yeah. So it was of course a mutual agreement, which we both came up with. We both had our inputs, and we both agreed that this is something that would be a better lifestyle for our child at the time. And, we both kind of used the support of each other for it. So, my influence in it was just basically, being there, being strong, sharing my side of the story and perspectives. And we were both on the same track of it.
Had you had any awareness about the adoption process or the idea of open adoption? Had you had any knowledge at that point of what that would look like, or had this been kind of like a foreign concept to you?
It was a foreign concept. Starting age, you're just kind of like, oh, where do we go? Where do we start? Anything, So, it was very foreign to both of us at the time.
And you were younger too. You were 19, 20 years old. So I'm sure there wasn't as much, that you had known about. Tell me a little bit about when you started researching agencies and how you came across Adoptions from the Heart and your social worker.
So, my social worker, I can't say enough about Joan. Even still to this day, someone brings up Adoptions from the Heart and my social worker, Joan, is the first thing that pops into my head. But as for researching and stuff like that, it was basically, just kind of talking around and, doing research and saying through Google and stuff like that. And then just reading about what Adoption from the Heart, what their goal was, what their vision was, and, just how they treated us. And, first from the first call all the way up, even still here we are, 2021, and I'm still in contact with you guys, and it's been amazing, but yeah, my social worker, Joan, was phenomenal. And I can't say anything, it's all positive. Everything's positive for it.
Good. Yeah, I know people sometimes think that when they call us, that means that they're automatically pressured into adoption. But we really try hard to make sure we're there to go over all your options and support you in whatever you decide.
Yeah, most definitely. That was one of the major things too, is like when we called, I still remember everything like it was yesterday. And when we called, it was like, we went over every step, every outcome, share your story. What is making you veer towards this decision? And it was just, no pressure at all. It was just a very, fluent, like, hey, look, this is what we can do. We do have other options. There's, if you don't feel comfortable doing it this way, there's A, B, C, or D. There's always an option to an option to an option, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about when you started looking at profiles of prospective families. I know you have kind of a funny story of what you've done together.
So I used to work in a print shop at the time. And what we did is, of course, there's the platform where you can look at the prospective parents and all that stuff. And what we did is we made copies and printed off every single one of them. And what we did is she took a stack, I took a stack. And then we had a neutral one in the middle, and we wanted to find a birth parent that was, or not birth parent, a adoptive parent that was going to be very similar to myself and my ex at the time. And so basically I went through with a highlighter and highlighted everything that was pro and everything that was negative and another highlighter. She did the exact same thing, and we both came together at the time. And on the neutral one, we both highlighted our similarities and our, ones that weren't very similar. And that's how we came to the conclusion of what parent would be the best.
Wonderful. How did the hospital experience go for you?
So the hospital experience, can't say it was 100% all positive. My side, I had a very strong family aspect of, supporting where my ex's really wasn't. And basically her mom came up during this time and, came up with like car seats and, was trying to convince my ex and myself at the time of, what you're doing isn't correct, which, it's not right, and tried to put that thought in our mind. But thankfully, Joan was there. We called her immediately as soon as my ex went into labor. And she was probably about an hour north of the hospital. And I think Joan made it there in about 15 minutes, it seemed like. But, and she was a mediator. She was basically like, she got the hospital staff involved and got security involved and was like, whatever you need from me, let me know. Do you need them removed? Do you want them to stay? And of course, we did want them to stay. This is as much as an impact as it is on my life as it is their life. And, just having the hospital staff and knowing that you had that support and resources behind you without any judgment. There was no judgment whatsoever, even from the hospital staff down to security members. Everyone was there and was just supportive.
And Joan's been with our agency, it feels like 100 years, and she's so wonderful. And I'm really happy that you had that backbone going through this process, because that's why when you work with a social worker, they're there to have your back. They're there to make sure they advocate for you, find out what you need, be there to kind of get you through the processing of everything. And it sounds like Joan did exactly that for both of you guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was there every step of the way. Even from the points of, like checking in on us, when the due date got closer and closer and closer, I think I was talking to Joan maybe every other day. If I wasn't talking to her, Max was talking to her, and it was insane. It was always something. It was always that open communication, whatever we needed, any type of support, she was right there. And if she wasn't there, the agency was right there for us. There was always a backup, and it was phenomenal. I couldn't ask for something better,
Talk to me a little bit about what type of open adoption you have built with this family and with your son.
So my open adoption is phenomenal. I couldn't ask for anything more. Basically every Christmas, we get a booklet. I'm remarried now and, everything. And, we get a booklet every year of, what he's doing, what's going on, on my birthday, same thing, happy birthday, how you doing? And, I have the phone numbers of both of them, and, we're on Facebook with each other, and, I get to see updates, and anytime I can call them at any time I want and be like, hey, what's going on? What's Nathan doing? Blah, blah, blah. And, I'll get that update. I'll get the pictures. And anytime we want to go down there and visit them, it's always an open book, like, you want to come down, just let us know ahead of time. We'll do lunch, we'll do breakfast. And, it's phenomenal. It's just anytime that I'm feeling down or, I'm feeling something, text them, email them, I get a response immediately, and it's phenomenal.
Talk to me about your personal family, like if your parents are involved and how their support has been over the years with Nathan.
Yeah, so that's actually pretty funny. Like I said, is I get the books and everything, and when I get them, I'm just excited. I get to see the new adventures and what he's gone through. And so I'll sit down, of course, with my wife first, and we'll go through the books, and then, after that, I'll call up my mom or FaceTime my mom and be like, hey, look, this is what Nathan's doing. Or, we always go over to their house or vice versa. They come over to ours, and, we always sit down, and my side of the family is very, very supportive of it. My mother, my father, my stepfather, everybody's been so supportive of it, and they get as excited as I do. because, you know, they get to go, they went through the adventure with me. So, you know, to see them excited and to have that support and backbone, I couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah. I'm really happy about that, because people forget that a birth parent's extended family, whether it's your parents, your siblings, friends, or just loved ones that are close with you, they went through this with you as well, and they're important to the equation. And we want to make sure that people realize open adoption extends beyond just the biological parents. And it sounds like for you, you've been able to involve them in your life with Nathan.
I mean, it was actually to the point of, like, for an instance, when we got married, my wife and I mean, we invited, you know, my son and their parents. I mean, that's just how much of a bond and relationship that we connected throughout the years. You know, I mean, it's crazy.
So Kyle, sometimes when women and men come to us and they're contemplating whether or not they want to make this adoption plan for their child, they try to think about, like, long term. What is life going to look like down the road? How am I going to explain this to people? What if one day I get into a new relationship? Am I going to bring this up? How do I talk about my child that I placed for adoption? So I'm really curious, because you had mentioned that you are now married.
Yep.
I was curious kind of what conversations you had with your wife when you first met her, if you did, about Nathan.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty funny. My wife and I, Jordan, I mean, we've been friends for a long time. You know, so she knew me, you know, when through the whole Nathan thing and you know, the adoption process. So she's always been there. I myself have not always been open about it. You know, I mean, for the first couple of years, it was a shutdown. It was like, you know, I don't want to talk about it. I might feel some type of way. I might feel embarrassed, or, you know, somebody's going to judge me or look down upon me. And now it's like, it's kind of like a conversation starter. You know, like when people are going through hard times, it's like, hey, look, I've been there. I've been through situations like that, you know, or, you know, helping someone, or, you know, you guys, it's just being so much more open about it. And Jordan, you know, my wife, she's just, you know, we have pictures up around the house of them. And, you know, like I said, just the mutual agreement of looking through the photos or going down there. She comes down there with me to go see them. And it's, you know, I mean, it's good. It's great.
Yeah. And I mean, people think that you have to, like, never speak about it again. And sometimes birth parents feel like they have to, like, close this all in one box and never talk about it because they feel some sort of shame or guilt associated with their decision. But it sounds like for you, you've almost had, like, this therapeutic processing of everything over the years, because people have been so supportive. You've been able to talk about it, and that's been helpful for you to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, it really has been. I mean, and for someone that, you know, you walk up to someone, you know, like in my job I was previously with, you know, I mean, just sitting down and, you know, once you start getting to know people, it's like, hey, you know, when I was through this, I've done this. And then you're like, I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I've been through the adoption process, you know, or talking to someone that has been adopted. And you're like, hey, I've been in that position, you know, I've been on the other end of it, you know, and it's very surprisingly, I've never once gotten a rebuttal of like, oh, you should have never done that. Oh, you should have done this or done. I've never got that. It's been like, man, you are such a strong person. You know, I can't believe you went through something like that. You know, what was it like? And you start building this conversation and in a repetition of, you know, like what happened and sharing your side of the story. And, you know, you might help someone else out that's going through something similar, contemplating the same thing, or even just being like, wow, you know, this person's a strong person from what they've gone through. I can do it too. I can go through what I'm going through.
Absolutely. How do you feel like society today views adoption and specifically birth fathers?
I mean, it's different. I mean, from 10 years ago to today, you know, I mean, it's a completely different avenue. I mean, in today's world, it's like, you know, being a birth father and coming out and talking about it, or, you know, the birth father's supposed to be the strong one. And, you know, it's supposed to be that, you know, put their foot in the sand and not move and not budge. But it's not all about that. You know, it's about, you know, I mean, we're the exact same thing as everyone else. You know, I mean, birth fathers still have feelings and contemplations too, you know, and it doesn't matter, you know, coming from a birth father, it's different, you know, because it's like, you don't hear a lot of guys talking about this. They're like, oh man, there goes, you know, there goes this or there goes that. It's like, no, it's like, you know, you have to be open. You have to talk about this stuff. And I mean, in today's world, it's a completely different thing. I don't want to say it's normal, but it's easier for birth parents and birth fathers to talk about this now than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Thank you so much to Kyle for joining us on this episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV. It's not every day that we have the opportunity to sit down and really hear the perspective from a birth father. Please tune in next week when we continue our conversations with Kyle as he tries to give advice for expecting fathers that may be considering adoption. We're hopeful that his story can help prospective adoptive families as well. Thanks so much, and tune in next week for another episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV.